an empty volume, you have dots on your face, you have this unitard on. How do you completely manufacture the environment around you and make that evident in your performances? Whoever wants to go first.
Acting.
Put some acting on it. If I may. I'm kidding.
Well, is there like a process that you have, you know, perhaps to get into character? Actually, Bryan, I heard your process involves a notebook.
Yes. Pascal's a professor of these things. You had something you wanted to say.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yes. Essentially, acting, it's not really a joke when I say acting. Acting is acting. When we moved from theatre and went into film, there was a lot of resistance to it. People said, oh, the constraints of film is against the art of acting. Well, you can see why, because you've been doing it in one way and then now we're changing it up. We have new constraints, but theatre has its constraints and its conditions. In the same way we moved from film and now into game with the added complexity of interactivity, right? But the essential truth is this: as an actor, you are there to tell the truth. In motion capture, everything is stripped down. You don't see the physical form, the skin, the sweat, the extra details that I'm giving you now. All you see is the bone. So you have to be truthful, literally, to the bone. And if you're not, this system will show it up like anything else. If you pretend that something's heavy, there's no real counterbalance. I can make it look like these glasses are really heavy, like this. But in motion capture, it'll show that that's not real. Somebody either has to adjust that or has to be. So there are more constraints, and interactivity brings extra constraints and more challenges to what you are used to as an actor. But these are simply different ways, different challenges to your craft. Essentially, you're doing the same thing. You have to find different ways of going about these things. You can't be an actor that says, no, I don't do that. No, that's not how the method works. You have to be the kind of actor that says, okay, how do I do this? How can I make this work?
Yeah, if I may say something, I think, as you saw in the videos, what's really special about motion capture is that there is no set. There is no costume. There is no camera. So for actors, sometimes it's a little bit, unsettling, and it's difficult. You need to imagine everything. It's even worse than acting in front of a green screen, because you can still do your costume and still see what you look like. But here in motion capture, nothing looks the way it was going to look in the end. So I know my work as a director is try to give as many information as I can to these people, so they can really understand what's around them, where to look at, where there's a wall, where there's this and that, so they understand and they can deliver the best performance.
In some cases, the technology and the shape of it really helped for Connor because he's an android. So wearing this mocap suit was something that was helpful to me to remember my middlemost neutral body use, so that the big character choices could bend away from a core neutral self. There's also a grid on the floor, which was really helpful for me. So moving through space, Connor always moves in the most efficient way. The echo that comes back to us makes me feel nervous, so I'm going to mention that right now. Or is it just for us?
No, I hear it.
Oh, good.
I kind of hear it.
Only Andrew.
Also, Connor scans the environment when he walks into the crime scene, so I would use that opportunity at the start of scenes when Connor walks into a place to kind of image map the concept art that David would have showed us beforehand to place certain important specific objects in the room. So you can use your imagination to build up the environment, because usually the set is very, very minimal.
Yeah, Jesse, so you're used to having built out sets, everything from Cabin in the Wood to Grey's Anatomy. Was it an adjustment to have to go into this absolutely empty volume?
A little bit. Hi, everybody. It was a little bit. I mean, I started in theater, but also so there was some similarity there. But it is, like David said, it's stripped down to the bone, so it's kind of more like an audition than anything else, in that auditions suck. in that you don't have anything, you're not used to yet, you don't have anything to work with, and you're faking it. You feel like you're just on camera, and please God don't let this tape come out, which is right there on the screen. But you're faking everything and improvising, and so having to go into a bare bones space, and you've got a piece of, a wooden crate to be one thing, and you're imagining the rest. You have to be prepped and prepared and do the process, as Bryan just illustrated, prepare and know what you are going to do, what's truthful for your character, and just try to make it work. It was disorienting for me, to be honest. It was disorienting at first. Because you have to imagine everything. Everything has to be in your imagination, and remember your 4 pages of lines or whatever, and the timing, and actually be present with another human being or 3 other ones, and just doing parkour all over the damn place. And you don't get the same kind of check-in break experiences on film or TV. There's a 30-minute break for lighting, and then they need to reblock something, or something broke on set. And it's just the rhythm. Not that that's better or worse. It's just a rhythm of you get to check in with yourself and take a look. Now it's not my coverage, it's Bryan. So for him, I'm going to do something different. There's no cameras, meaning there's cameras everywhere. What are there? There's 80 cameras on at all times on a rig. So you don't have to find your light, your space. I got to make sure if Bryan's in front of me, I've got to position myself here. You don't have to do any of that. So that should also make it kind of more pure. So I think it's a gift and a curse. It was harder at first, and then it became much easier.
I mean, all of you have extensive theater training, so in some ways that really helped, were the building blocks for all of this performance, because this is theater in the round, like black box theater, you got nothing. And speaking of nothing, speaking of having to imagine everything, this is the first time that Connor and Markus had met in real life.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
You were all
we met backstage, technically. We would have greeted each other a little more. There you go.
Thank you.
But yeah, it is. It's hard to believe. I actually was trying to convince, is it possible we met in Paris shooting? I'm so familiar with your face and voice, you think you know people, which also happens in real life, and it's sometimes awkward.
And we shouldn't leave David out of this moment. Every time I, as Connor, was acting with Markus, it was David. And anytime Jesse was acting as Markus with Connor, it was David.
That's why those are the weaker scenes in the game. Just kidding, no, but David had to do a tour de force performances as many characters.
Yeah, fortunately my performance is not in the final game, that's the good news. But no, it's my role for scheduling reasons. It was not possible to have Jesse and Bryan on stage at the same time. Usually we try to do that as much as possible, have everyone on stage at the same time and acting together, but in this case it was not possible. So I try to replace them the best I can and give them their lines and just give them someone to look at and to talk to. And it went well, because when we had their performances, we assembled them in the final game to make them talk to each other. And fortunately it worked. So.
Yeah, but Bryan and Amelia, you got to work together. You had your scenes together. What was that like?
That was a lot of fun. Bryan is such an incredible scene partner. That's how we met, was on set. Not this set, but another set. And I just trust him, and I knew that I could go to the places that scared me with him by my side.
You did a great job.
Pascal, you're a teacher for motion capture now. As a foremost expert in motion capture, do you have any hot tips you can share with all of us that you would share with your students?
Sure. The first one that I mentioned already is tell the truth. Find ways of telling the truth. The second one would be ask questions. Whatever questions you need to ask them to make sure that you get all the information you need. Where am I? Who am I? What do I want? What's the environment? If they have something called pre-visualization, you can ask them to do that, so you can see where everything is placed, so that when you're walking through this empty volume, when you look down a long corridor, you are seeing the long corridor. You're not seeing the wall, which is only 15 feet away. Lastly, I would say, yes, be the actor that says, how can I do this? Not the actor that says, this is not how I do this. I think those are the three most important things.
Yeah, if I may add something, I mean, usually, sometimes actors who are not familiar with motion capture, they think that they need to exaggerate to get the emotion across. Actually, it's not the case because the motion capture systems are very precise under the millimeter. So every single, move of your face or your skin will come across. So my first recommendation to actors is usually don't exaggerate. Just be natural. Just do it the way you would in a film. Just be as real, as sincere, because the system will capture everything. And then it's our job, with the technology and everything, to make sure that the emotion will come across and appear on screen.
Has there ever been a time that you've had to adjust the performances to fit the technology, where you had some little spur of the moment action and you just couldn't capture it with the technology available? Any memories of that?
I have one.
Oh yeah?
The motion capture area for performance capture is quite limited. I think it's 5 meters by 4 meters. So it's quite small. And I remember with Ellen Page on Beyond, we had a walk in the park, so they were basically walking and talking at the same time. But the space was too small to walk for 10 minutes as they talked. So what we did is going back and forth. So they were going back and forth and pretending everything was natural. And then in the final game, of course, we edited the animation to make sure that they were walking not back and forth, but in this park. But for actors, it's sometimes really disorienting because they need to adjust these kind of things to the performance while keeping the emotion and being true to their role in the part. I don't know if you guys have another example in Detroit where technology came in the way.
I would say that you would say something.
I would say something, yes. I would say that one thing that was a challenge was if you look down, then your face can't be captured by the cameras. So in particular, if you choose to shoot the Tracis, then I had this scene where I was over the body of my love, and I couldn't look at her because then they couldn't capture my face. So just imagining that she was just up right in front of me, even though I was supposed to be looking down. So that was probably the trickiest thing with the technology that I can imagine.
So I work a lot with head cams now, and base cameras, sometimes multiple cameras now, and they are a nuisance in many ways, but it does make up for things like that. On the other hand,
somebody in that thing.
Absolutely, or go up against a glass wall, or whatever it is. If you're next to an object, you can't put your head real close and then turn your head because you're going to fall. If you're talking to another actor and you're very close, there's a limit to how much you can, and then you end up sometimes slightly turning your head to be able to get closer, and that looks odd. So there's always a trade-off with certain aspects of this technology that you sometimes win in areas and lose in areas, and every studio that I've worked at has a different approach to solving the same problems and make different trade-offs.
Our approach at Quantic Dream was always not to use headsets. Because we thought it was very intrusive for actors. You need to imagine that you have something quite heavy on your head, sometimes wired. You have, there's 2 cameras in front of you. Sometimes there's a lamp, 4 cameras, depends on the system, and you have a lamp in your face. So try to hack to be moving with this setup on your head is something very challenging. So we developed a technology where you don't need this. It's just small markers, and it allows to have very close, be very close, to have actors very close to each other, and it's less intrusive.
So I think we can all agree that video games have a long way to go in mainstream perception in terms of being regarded as an art, which is wrong. But how did you have to sort of convince anybody to be part of this, or convince them like, no, we're telling a really amazing narrative, and this isn't just like a, video game?
So I've been very fortunate because I always met people who were curious and interested and intrigued by the projects we had. I was also fortunate because I started my career working with David Bowie as a virtual actor in Omicron in 1999. So we made him the first virtual actor, or one of the first in history. So we started with David Bowie, so then it helps to build credibility, of course. But also it was great also because we work on story-driven games. So we come with a script to these actors. So instead of telling them, oh, it's a shooter and we are going to shoot and blah, blah, blah. No, we just come with a story, descriptions, character scripts, which they are used to read. So it was always pretty easy. I don't know how you guys felt about it.
Yeah, I didn't need any convincing. Video games are fucking cool. We grew up being really influenced by them, and it's narrative that you can dive into. And you're telling me you want to let me, never mind asking to do the work, but let me be the protagonist, let me be the face on the game. I'm thinking of playing sports games. I don't know, my group, we would always create our own players, so it looks like you. We're trying to be in video games. We're trying to make ourselves a part of the story, so you know, I guess it's kind of a metaphor for everything in there. People want representation matters, people want to see themselves, people want to imagine themselves in story and be worthy of being involved in story and be seen, and so it's all connected, I think. But yes, it is, I haven't about it, just speaking for myself, I was, yeah.
It's always really cool to hear actors say how excited they are about games and about narrative in games, honestly. But did any of you play, the rest of you, did you play video games before that? And have you looked at video games differently after this project with Quantic Dream?
I had not played any video games before, except some Guitar Hero, but that doesn't, that's the same type of thing.
Brave of you to admit that, Hero.
But yeah, no, I had not played video games, and Detroit was actually the very first game that I played, and it blew my mind that a game could take you on such an epic emotional adventure and pull you in such radical different directions and make you really question yourself, question humanity, question these big decisions. And I was just really inspired by games and by the opportunity that it presents to the player to really ask these big questions that I think you don't quite get in film because, or watching a TV show, because you're like, oh, don't do that, I would do something so differently. And then in the game, you can do that. So really that blew my mind, and I think that I would love to continue to see more games like this that really challenge the player and make them ask these big questions, because it makes our society better.
There were two elements I would also add in seeing the Detroit layout, which was this moral dilemma. Like, that there's not, we're speaking of growing up with video games and other stories, usually a bad guy and a good guy. And you're always the good guy, no matter what. And it's kind of like just like cowboyism, American storytelling, right? You're just the good guy automatically, you know, for no particular reason, but just because we said so, and everybody you come up against is the bad guy automatically. And this was far more complex and nuanced than that. So that stood out, and that was interesting. And also, some of my favorite reading, my young literary experiences were in Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid. So those two things kind of intersected when I was introduced to this narrative. So I'm recalling my first kind of introduction to David and the team, and those were reasons why I was excited.
Yeah, an ability to sort of choose your own destiny. And in this case, yeah, they could make Markus do things that were morally reprehensible or have an
reasonable guy.
I mean, you know, morality is a real gray thing. Yeah, no black and white, right? But Pascal, and you were talking about backstage.
Yes.
You remembered something about branching narrative from your childhood.
So I would say that Heavy Rain didn't necessarily revolutionize my attitude to games as much as it did revolutionize my attitude to storytelling and stories. To scooch back a little bit, what you're referencing there is that I recall only relatively recently that my dad was a lecturer, and we had something called the BBC Micro B, which was a very early form of computer. And I learned how to program it in BASIC. And the first thing I did is I created an image with a question at the beginning with an A-B answer. If you chose B, you had another image and another scenario, and so on. It was the beginning of a Choose Your Own Adventure. I only got to 3 pages because it's really hard, really hard. But the results, what you can do, is phenomenal, because I do think it's a departure from 500 years of written storytelling, and thousands of years of verbal storytelling, there is a departure, because whereas it's often a trope where the hero experiences life in a different world to their birthright. King Arthur, for example, or Henry V. They both live with those that don't have rather than people that do. And then they become better fools as a result. And that speaks to the idea that experiencing life, or differences and challenges, makes you a better person. Well, interactive game has the possibility of doing that. Now that's something new. Now, if you have responsibility where you choose A and somebody dies and B somebody doesn't, and you see the repercussion, well, you have the possibility of living a life very different from your own and experiencing what that's like and the repercussions of the choices you make. Now, to me, that's huge. That's not small. That's not inconsiderable. That's a new way of sharing and telling and experiencing stories.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. It's a new way to tell stories. It's a life simulator. It can put you in situations that hopefully you will never experience in real life, but still put you in this situation and see how you would react and question who you are, question your moral values, and for all these reasons, it's a very fascinating medium. I would like also to say one thing about this gentleman, and yeah, I mean, they've done a fantastic job, because what's so special about interactive storytelling is that you are going to shoot different versions of the story. So Markus, Jesse, for example, with his character Markus, had to play Markus being pacifist up to the end against all odds and really staying, you know, pacifist up to the end, or becoming violent. And he had to be believable, incredible in both situations. Whatever the player decided, Jesse had to deliver a performance, and all actors had to deliver a performance that would be convincing in all cases. And I think that was a major challenge. It was a major challenge for me as a director, but I can only imagine how challenging it's been for you guys.
It made it really interesting, now that you mention it, as an actor, because sometimes, you know, there are characters that you relate to more, you like, well, we got to play multiple characters. And that's obviously rare, you don't get to do that as an actor. When you pick a narrative, I'm this guy, or I'm that guy. And in this, you get to really go down multiple pipelines in an experience, and that's a more just full and sometimes fulfilling, certainly more challenging to shake one off, start over, don't judge it. And what if I took this perspective? It kind of helps you round out your decision making. It was definitely an extra opportunity.
It seems really hard to keep threads of all of that at once.
It was.
Bryan.
Pascal and I were talking about this when it comes to Ethan and Heavy Rain, and it's definitely true of Connor as well, that any character that you play, or anybody who's sitting here with us, might do some of these things that they might think they would never do. And what's really cool about fleshing out a character like this is that you have a trailer for this Will Smith movie, which looks pretty dope. Right?
Yeah, there's something playing.
I'm easily distracted, as you might imagine. But there's a lot of different things that you are capable of that you might not think that you're capable of because you've never been put in those given circumstances. So to play a character and to figure out what a character does with all of these potentialities in front of you is a really, really rewarding experience, because you're not just thinking, okay, what's the right choice for this scene to tell this story? There's a ton of different right choices to tell a ton of different stories, which are all equally valid.
But Bryan and Amelia have been streaming on their Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Bryan Dechart. Any of the Connor Army or Tracis Angels in here? Awesome. But have you found certain patterns with how the community has reacted to those branching narratives, things that were surprising to you?
I think something that was the most inspiring was after our first playthrough, not knowing much about games or the gaming world before entering this amazing new space, I assumed that people would take the more violent route, and I found so much hope realizing that the majority of the players were choosing these empathetic choices. And when you look at the stats and at the end of the game to see the universal choices that people made, so many people chose these empathetic options, which really gave me an incredible amount of hope in our future society and in the next generations, really, because that's what we need. We need empathy. We need it really bad.
Yeah, also, quick follow-up question to that. You hadn't had experience in games, and now you guys are like hardcore gamers.
Talk about that? Okay. So I played a ton of video games growing up, and then I started doing plays, and playing in a game is a lot like playing in a play, except for now that there's like, you know, girls and stuff, or it's not just your brother all the time, it's other people. So I started doing a lot of plays, and then went to school for acting, and my brother was the one that, you know, played World of Warcraft all the time, and, you know, my parents were saying, focus on school, so I, being the older sibling, was like, I turned away from video games. Also, I was really bad at Halo 1, like, that was kind of where I fell off, and the LAN parties were just sad for me, and so I went off to be like, I'm going to be a really professional, serious actor, and video games are like this other thing that I used to do. And then, when I got really specific about what kind of acting do you want to do, because you can audition for tons and tons of different kinds of things that are very, very different from each other, seeing movies like Lord of the Rings, and seeing Andy Serkis as Gollum, and then of course this like understanding that this technology is becoming more and more possible. And I was writing for myself. I do a lot of like visualization writing. I really believe you can write things into existence. I think morning pages and journaling are super important and valuable, especially if you're creative. But I was writing about how performance capture was like this thing that I was going to try to narrow in on, because it dealt with voice, accents and dialects, and especially movement, as Pascal works. And somebody on that day, as I like wrote this, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life now. It's going to be performance capture acting. My friend, my roommate, dear friend Cameron Lewis, who designed the shirts that I see in this room, sent me a trailer for Beyond Two Souls, and was like, look at this, they're doing performance capture in a video game and it looks like a movie. And I was like, oh, it can happen.
I didn't know this story, okay?
And so, you know, for me anyway, coming back to it has been like a wonderful return, and this notion of the Connor Army that has gotten, we've gotten to know each other very well over the course of the last like year and a half streaming on Twitch. It's now we have like a curated list of, okay, you would be horrible at these games, stay away from these games, but you would love these games, and the kinds of games that have been recommended for us has been really, really awesome, because they're super empathetic stories, branching narratives, where you're not just playing a character who's the good guy because he's the good guy and he kills the bad guy because he's the bad guy, and that's how you deal with the problem is killing. Instead, there's this question of all of these other possibilities of what the world is like, and that's a very real experience, which is like what I think fascinates people about games like this.
I don't know. Right, yeah, absolutely.
Did I go too far?
No. But how have you seen, I mean, I guess this is more for Pascal and for David, how have you seen not only the technology, but also the storytelling capabilities evolved from Heavy Rain to now?
You
can answer both together at the same time. Go.
No, the technology has evolved. The technology has evolved a lot between Heavy Rain and Dechart. Poor Pascal, we shot Heavy Rain. We didn't have performance capture, which means that we had to shoot voice and facial animations in a sound booth, and then play back the audio on the motion capture set and do the body animation, kind of synchronized with the voice, but we couldn't record both at the same time. So in matter of performance, it was like...
That sounds absolutely horrible.
Yeah, that's...
It was like doing a performance, but cut in two parts, face and voice and body on the other hand. So it was incredibly challenging for actors and for everyone involved, but especially for actors.
It ruined me.
But then on Detroit, the technology, and on Beyond and Detroit, the technology changed, and now we capture everything at the same time, all actors together. So it's still immensely challenging, but now we shoot everything at the same time.
Yeah, and even voiceover only lines, like there are some lines that are just voice lines inside of Connor's head, for instance. We still get to film them on the stage. They're only recording the audio, but you're still in the same environment, the same sense of the place.
I think some of the things that I've seen change in both those spheres. One is when I walked through Gamescom in 2010. It was Booth Babes and Bayonetta and, well, if you were there, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. over the years, I think that the story-driven aspects of the game have expanded into all sorts of different genres, which I think is fascinating. The technology itself has changed as well, so now you have, yes, there are head cams, which have certainly stormed the scene, and as I said, there are pluses and minuses for that. But there's also pre-visualization, which we're seeing now. Whereas, on the whole, you used to walk into volumes and maybe see artistic renders on a screen of the room that we're walking into. Now we can walk around with a virtual cam and look around the volume and see where everything is. That's a big, big difference. So in both those regards, I think that, I do honestly think that the work of Quantic Dream was a force that actually pushed that form of storytelling within games. I think that there's a lot to be thankful for that, because I think if you look back 10 years ago, what was going on, it's nothing like you look at Red Dead Redemption, you look at God of War, you look at most of the stuff that I work on at Ubisoft. There's such an element of story and character that people want in their stories, in their game.
Yeah, I think when we started creating narrative games in 2005 with Indigo Prophecy, I mean, it was really weird for many people to think about a game that would be story-driven. I mean, most people thought that if you were not shooting or jumping or driving or climbing, it wouldn't be really a game. So it was a real challenge for us back in the days, just to try to show to people, yes, storytelling can be the heart of the experience. You don't need violent actions in order to have something interactive. So we worked very hard, but that was 15 years ago, and things have changed a lot since then. And now, even in action games, all action games have a story, because everybody in the industry realized that if you have a great action game with a great story and great characters, it makes the game even better. So this is really the change I've seen over the past 15 years. But we keep believing that interactive storytelling is something absolutely fascinating, and we barely scratch the surface of what it can do.
Yeah, we were talking about how video games are a genre, not a medium, not a genre,
yeah.
And that we don't think of movies as like, oh, all movies have guns in them, or all TV shows are just about mountain climbing. I think that there's still so many different kinds of subjects to explore and different kinds of ways of telling story in games.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about this medium is that it's the only one where you create something with people. When you're a filmmaker, you write your film, you make it, and then you have spectators watching it, but they cannot interact with it, so they can just watch it. But here, we can create something together. I mean, there are more than 3 million people worldwide who play Dechart to date, and I told a story with 3 million people I've never met. That's fascinating. That's something only video games can do, and that's what I love so much about this medium.
Actors, are there any specific memorable moments from set? Any times that you just really connected with material, or where you said something that wasn't in your script that made it into the final game? Things that surprised you?
That was just a laugh.
Is the anecdote?
Bryan's got one.
I got one. I got a real good one. It was such a good one. I remember it now. I don't know. There's a couple of different moments that came out of this script that I think were fun discoveries on set. Playing with Clancy Brown was a lot of fun for me. Clancy is a bit of a deviant, and was very comfortable to kind of bend the rules, whereas I showed up on set and wanted to be very exact with everything. So I learned a lot from Clancy by way of sort of not stepping out of the script, but like finding where we could push the envelope a little bit, and then David would be like, no, you're an android, back in the box. And that was a fun thing to play with, because I think it created a cool dynamic between the two of us. Specifics? I had a lot of fun when Hank is drunk and we have to sober him back up and put him in the shower and turn the little, so a lot of the movements, anytime there's a quick time action in the game, you are recording these in phrases, right, in beats. So we would take pauses, and David would tell me if certain things were going to be done by the player that we needed to have a pause. So like if you're going to open up the Tracis, you touch her here, it opens, then you won't pull out the part. You gotta separate it. And that's what happened, right? But for the part where we put him in the shower, I knew that there was a moment where the player would turn on the water, and a moment I was under the impression, turn off the water. So Clancy had been like slamming me up against stuff and picking me up and doing all this like, you know, scary 6 foot, he's a very sweet guy, but he's a gigantic man. And he was moving me all around. And so finally I had the opportunity in that scene to kind of like give him a little of it back. So one funny moment was when he's in the shower. It was a lot of fun for me as an actor to push him into the shower. He fell back into this kind of PVC pipe shower. Pause. I turn on the water. He starts screaming because he's covered in, you know, he's getting blasted with cold water. And then I just kind of stood there and let it happen. And I was like, you have to keep doing this until I go like that. And that's also where the big slap, a wake up lieutenant, it's me, Connor, that's where that came from. It's just like, you know, it's cool because on set, the way they work in Quantic Dream, there's all of the focus is put on the performance. So the actors really are the main thing that day, which doesn't always happen on film and television. There's a lot of other things you have to keep track of. And so to be able to play little moments over and over and over again and workshop them and discover these things in the moment was a really, really awesome experience.
I just remember being tired. It was really hard. I had, you know, Markus has a lot of multi-page speeches that David wrote, and it's a lot of physicality, and it's a lot of remembering 4 pages of just talking, yelling over, you know, to a sea of people. And remember what he said earlier is you have to do it, you know, don't overdo it, but you're yelling to a sea of people. But make it real, but make it so you can be heard, but be nuanced, but project. But it's also like you're fighting for your life and the life of everybody you've ever known, but keep it subtle. And, you know, intense. Yeah, but also intense. And that was a lot. That was a lot to manage while on a random like box in the middle of a carpeted warehouse. You know, like just imagining everything and having your blood running and jumping up on this box to give these speeches over and over again. It was a lot of gears going at the same time, and it was taxing, but all the more satisfying once you were able to chip away at some of them and make progress. It was a pretty damn emotional experience. So it meant a lot to make strides and put some things behind you and to feel like you were progressing through a game and through a journey. Yeah, it was a lot harder than I expected. It was a lot more taxing than I expected, so it earned a lot more of my respect.
Well, also, I think you said that they were going through something like 40 pages a day, right?
Yeah, we've done more.
And for reference, like on a normal, like a set on a movie.
On Grey's, we do like 7 pages a day.
That's like 7 pages a day. So you
with like 13 actors, not 40 pages with 2. It's very, very different.
That's grueling. That pace is grueling.
Yeah, the food was good though. What's that?
What was the film?
What was your favorite?
Oh, that was French.
Oh, it's Paris. It's everything. Cheese,
pastries and coffee, and also pastries and some salami and cheese, and also pastries.
No, but actually we don't rush when we shoot. Actually, we do a lot of takes.
Yeah.
Too many, we would say some of these people. But sometimes we do 20 takes with some from the worst.
I had purged most of those memories, but thanks for bringing that.
I remember fondly David saying, "Perfect."
Yes.
One more for safety. One more for safety.
But in a way, it's sort of a gift as an actor to just keep barreling through it, as opposed to having to stop down and wait an hour while they're changing the lights and you the trailer.
For emotional stuff, that's certainly true. I think a lot of us can relate to doing a really emotional scene in a traditional format. You're going to shoot the master, you're going to shoot something medium, and you're going to shoot all, if it's just us two, you shoot all on her, but I'm giving all my emotion, but it's totally off camera, nobody will ever see it, but you have to give her your all so she can have something to respond to, unless you're a selfish prick. So you give it your all. Then by the time they get around to you, it's 3 hours later. 2 hours later, that's what have you held in your reserve, what have you saved, having that balance. But for this, being able to keep it going, keep that engine going, you might feel burnt out afterwards, but you really got it. You were in the pocket at the time. Or yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah, and you also really get to play with all the different little moments because you're doing it so many times and the camera's always on you. You don't have to, like, oh, that wasn't in my coverage. You get to play with all of these little nuanced moments of like, at this moment, what if I, you know, something is happening, I'm feeling something in my hand, or you get to follow your instincts in a way that you can do on film and TV, but they won't necessarily get to capture it. So getting to be filmed all at once, just over and over and over again, you get to really stretch your muscles and play with different moments.
Every moment in the volume that you're acting is a chance to tell the story. Every moment. If you are, even the movement, the small movement of the hand, is going to be picked up and it might be used. But every moment has that opportunity. And as a result, it can be quite exhausting because you have to think of every moment. You don't get to sit back and you know it's a return shot and okay, we have our break now. And I have this thing that every time around 3:30, 4 o'clock, all the actors they've been working all day to go. Yeah. Did you have that? Sure. I just think it only happens in the volume, and I think it's like it's a mixture of the lighting and this intense work environment. Somehow at 3:30 it's like, I gotta get some coffee.
It's also kind of like working in a casino. There's no windows. It's very cold. You can't see the daylight. You don't see time elapsing. You know, they just keep you going. There's
People
also
been wearing the same clothes for years.
Yeah, you wear the same outfits. Well, it's like a wetsuit. What do you call? We also had to. You have to physically kind of check in and out of the system. What was the routine we have to do?
It's a ROM.
ROM.
Should we use it like now?
I don't remember it, but I had it.
Oh, come on.
Do you remember like the CGT poses?
In order to get in the
Somebody want to get up and do it?
Yeah, well, you have all your mocap stuff on your face and on your body, and if one falls off, you have to stop, you have to put it back on. If you go to the bathroom, you have to take everything off, go to the bathroom, I'd cut a hole, but my style. But when you come back in, you have to kind of check into the system by doing this very choreographed.
It's like a gym, a technical gym to check that we can see all the markers. So it's a strange movement. You look really funny. Nice.
To go run and pee, you're taking everything to a halt for like 20 minutes. But it's hard to take anything too seriously because when you have to do this kind of choreographed jumping bear in sync choreographed dance before everything. Oh, that's right. You have to do all your facial expressions.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, every time. What is it? 80? Is it 80 things on our face, David? Is it something like 80?
90 dots on the face.
So one of those can fall off, and you're in the middle of this emotional performance, and you got to stop and get it reset and with tweezers and do it all again because that was no good because you looked like you had a stroke.
Well, I really think that motion capture actors deserve a lot of respect because it's incredibly challenging, and actually it's a very pure form of acting. You need to create emotion purely based on your lines, your talents, and your partner. There's no way to lie. And I was really impressed by some moments on Detroit with these people because they made us cry. And believe me, when there's no set, no costume, no camera, no lighting, nothing, just creating such emotional moments just based on your performance is something absolutely incredible. I remember a scene, Jesse, where North gives you a heart.
Yeah, me and Minka, that was super emotional. That got like surprisingly emotional. That's a hell of a scene. Yeah, those were real tears. Most of them. At the end, they kind of got.
Everybody was crying, so it was technically challenging because the markers suffer of the tears.
Yeah, but again, you're in a wetsuit on a carpet in a room, imagining this entire vast universe that is destroying you. It's a lot to project.
It's a very pure form of acting. It's just emotion. And I remember another scene when Kara goes to the camp at the end and she enters the container with little Addis. I mean, the entire team was basically crying. So it was, when you get that on set as a director, you know that you have something absolutely strong and unique, and you're very proud of the talents you work with.
There's a certain level of trust. It is so pure, and you can just get all of it there. There's no lying. You were saying you have to live your truth. But there's a certain amount of trust that you have to put into all the animators and the editors because you're not playing to a camera. You don't know what it's going to look like. You're just doing doing it in a space and hope that they get your good angle. What was that like? Because all of you have experience on camera as well, so what was that adjustment like? And when you finally saw it, was it like mind-blowing?
When we did Heavy Rain, I spent some time going to each floor and looking at what the animators were doing with the data that I had given them. It was a huge learning curve of respect. The way that I look at it now is not that I am the sole creator of a character. I'm like a catalyst for an artistic team that ends up creating the character that you then see. Because there are infinite adjustments. Sometimes there are choices that are made, not musically, scenically, and even adjusting for things that you can't get right in motion capture, things that have to contact in a certain way, an elbow might be in the wrong spot, and so on. All these fine-tuning of performances, it's extraordinary. So it's not, I don't ever believe that I am the sole creator of a character. I'm not. I'm a creative catalyst, and sometimes I throw surprising stuff. I deliver more than I think people think they need sometimes. But that's what I'm doing, just offering it that out and then letting the team take it from there.
I saw the first hostage demo when that was the first piece we had filmed, and then in 2016 they released it at E3. And after I saw that was before I went and filmed the remaining 95% of the game. And seeing that trailer and what all the animators and everybody else had done to put it together gave me so much confidence and so much trust for what they were doing at Quantic Dream that it was really easy to give over. That every other scene, okay, you're running through this maze of corn, you're on a rooftop, there's all this going on, and you just gotta say, like, yeah, I'll make that happen.
Yeah, there's always a level of trust between the actors and the director, even in the film, but I think this level of trust needs to be even higher on a game, because it's true that it's filmed afterwards. It's sometimes difficult to understand for people, but we shoot the performance, but there's no camera. All the camera work, all the editing is done in a second phase. So the actors don't really see what we do with their performance until they can play the final game. So I'm always very, very thankful to actors to trust me and my team, because it's it requires a very high level of trust.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for technology.
Thank you. Thank you very much.